seconds before we start, and what I'd like is to excuse our children to upstairs to their program. So we have a children's program upstairs next door, and so they will go there while the adults, and you could certainly go join them if you wanted, but the adults are going to stay here for our Immigration Lumina Talk. So about 2 minutes, we're going to get started. Make sure you get your coffee and your oatmeal and such and find a seat. We will be doing a Q&A at the end, and we will also be doing a question table talk session in between the talks. So first is Colleen Thompson, and then we will do our table talk, and then next will be John Records, and then we will do table talk Q&A. On my right, on this table thing over here, this dresser table, there are some books there, and so those books are available to look at. And if you would like to check them out, please see Sharia. Sharia has those. Those are her personal books that she's willing to check out to us. So you're welcome to look at them today, and if you want them, please talk to her before you take them. All right, just a couple of minutes and we'll get started. Welcome, everybody, to Lumina Talks. My name is Kevin Bates, and we are here today with Colleen Thompson and John Records. The reason for the formal introduction is this is online. So we have about 400 downloads to our app that people view, and so know that this is all live online right now via our app and our website and on YouTube and Facebook and other things. So the reason why I bring that up is when you ask questions, know that that's going to be online. So your voice is everywhere if the mic picks it up. Normally, the mic does not pick it up. And so when you have a question that you ask live, what we do is we repeat the question in the microphone. Feels a little awkward sometimes, but we can make it through it because we're all adults and we can handle awkward things, right? So just know, though, that this is live for everyone to view, and I just give you that information so that you can make calculated decisions. Today, we are talking about immigration. And immigration is an important topic for everybody I know in this room, but also at a national and international level. Today, we are doing a Lumina Talk. A Lumina Talk is our version of a TED Talk where there's 15-minute talks and then breaks in between. And Colleen Thompson and John Records are with us to introduce the topic, tell us some stories, give us information, show us some more information, and help us then go into the deep dive as much as we want to. Know that these are just primer talks. This is not going to answer all the questions the world is asking, but it will give us some primers to then look into and show interest and get involved as we feel we can get involved. Know that this information is real. It is good information, and it is correct information. It's not made up, and it's not necessarily just pulled off the internet or ChatGPT and AI and things like that, that it's calculated but also well-researched information. So I'm going to welcome Colleen Thompson up, and she's going to do our first Lumina Talk on the story of immigration. So Colleen, let's give her a hand and welcome her with us.
Okay. Well, up until a few months ago, the only thing I knew about immigration was what I saw on the news. And as horrifying as that was, it was still something that happened to people that I did not know in places that I had not been. And so I was a bit removed until in the fall, ICE came to my town and took one of my friends, and then it became very personal. I asked my friend if I could share her story today, and she agreed because she welcomes any opportunity to counter the narrative that's being heard and believed by many people in this country that ICE is coming after the worst of the worst, the criminals. Now, after what's happened in the last few months, I think a lot more people are realizing that's not the case. But I saw a clip this week of a politician who was very angry and saying, they are taking away the rapists and the murderers, and she could not understand why the public was vilifying her, the ICE. They're the heroes, she said. So I'm going to tell you a different story. I'm going to change the names of this family because I want to protect them from further harm or harassment that they've already had. So there's a mother, A, I'll call her Adriana, B, her daughter, I'll call her Bianca, and C, her son, I'll call him Carlos. Now, I've known this family for quite a while, part of a group of families. We meet together, we have game nights together, we share meals, celebrations like birthdays. In the summer, Bianca had her wedding and we all got to celebrate that big event with her. And then in October, we had another game night, and she and her husband announced that they're having a baby in the spring. So it was very exciting. Her mother, Adriana, was delighted that she's going to be a grandmother soon. About a little over a week later, Bianca called me on the phone in tears and said that her mom had just been taken by ICE and was in Tacoma in the detention center there. I was shocked. She was devastated, obviously, but she was working very hard to get everything ready for her bond hearing. Now, bond hearing is where the judge will decide whether she's at risk for flight, and if they think she's not at risk for that, then they will accept her bond. They told her that she had to be prepared for up to $25,000 for bond money. So she's trying to figure out where to find that money and going to people. And she had to get a new lawyer because it was now in Washington. And so she needed a lawyer who could handle that case and was collecting letters, character letters, and asked if I would be willing to write one. And of course, she has excellent character. Adriana is one of the most generous, helpful, kind, patient, faith-filled, hardworking people that I know. She's been in this country for nearly a quarter of a century. She, both her children have been born here, and she's raised them, worked very hard all this time, paying her taxes, hasn't even had so much as a parking ticket. Her only pathway to be able to get her green card was to have an adult child who's a citizen petition for her. So when Bianca turned 21, they started the process, got a lawyer, and followed all the steps and had been waiting 3 years to hear. Well, in October, she finally got the letter, and it said she has an interview coming up in November. She was thrilled. The very next day, she walks out of her apartment with her son into the parking lot. They get in their car. She's going to take him to high school. And 6 black SUVs came in from 3 sides, pinned her in, and 12 masked men came out and surrounded her car. She was very confused. She was thinking, what's going on? She was looking for someone running, like they're catching a criminal. They made her get out of the car, up against the car and handcuff her, and it finally dawned on her, oh, I'm the criminal. And she said, they put her into the back of one of these SUVs, and she said, I was just praying the whole time, and she had this uncanny sense of peace throughout this. Considering what was happening, I think that is pretty amazing. But she looks out the window and sees her son is out there surrounded by the remaining 10 masked men, and he was not at peace. He was traumatized, and he's asking questions. What's going to happen to my mom? Where are you taking her? And they're laughing at him. He says, so what am I supposed to do? And he said, I have to get to school. And they said, well, looks like school's not in the cards for you today. So funny. I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound like the behavior of a hero to me. So they finally leave, and he's standing there all alone in the parking lot, a minor, not knowing what to do. A neighbor sees what had happened, comes up to him and asks a really good question. How can I help you? He said, I have to get to school. So he takes him to school. So Carlos walks into school, goes about his day. He didn't think about telling an adult what had happened. They weren't prepared for this. A friend saw that he was unusually emotional, which is not his MO. He's normally just this extremely happy kid. And it wasn't till the end of the day that he got connected with his sister, and he could, thank goodness, live with his sister and brother-in-law while his mother was in detention. So now let's go and see what's happening to Adriana. They take her to Portland, and then they take her up to Tacoma. They take away everything, her phone, even her clothes. They put her in a prison jumpsuit. And then they take her into this big room, she said was like the size of a gymnasium. And there were doors on all sides that were leading to dormitories, but all the dormitories were filled. So now they're filling this big room with bunk beds, and that's where she was going to stay. She was actually grateful that she could stay there because she could hear and watch everything that was going on and not be locked behind those dormitory doors. So that night, she fell asleep to the sound of women sobbing throughout the night. And that's what she heard every night. Some of the women in there were so depressed they never even got out of the bed during the daytime. Well, she decided, that is not going to be me. I'm going to stay positive. She prayed. That was her source of peace. And then she became an instrument of peace to all these hurting people around her. When she's telling me that, I said, wow, you were blooming where you were planted. And she's like, what does that mean? And I said, well, when a plant is planted in good soil with good conditions, it's going to thrive. But if you plant a plant in soil with harsh conditions like extreme heat or cold, it's going to shrivel and die. But then I told her about a time I was hiking up in the gorge and was on this rocky cliff, and there was this little wildflower coming up through the crack. And I'm thinking, how can that plant, it must be so resilient that it's blooming right here under these harsh conditions. Well, that's what Adriana was doing. She got up the next morning and she started talking to people, finding out their stories. She discovered who needed encouragement, and she provided it. For example, there was a 19-year-old girl there who she was detained with her father, but he's on the other side, and she had no contact with him. She didn't speak English, and she didn't speak Spanish. She spoke an indigenous language from South America, so she could not communicate with anybody. She was scared. So Adriana takes her under her wing. She teaches her some words in Spanish so she can communicate a little bit, and just loved on this girl. Another thing she did was she stood up for people. One time she went into the bathroom and there was a woman who was extremely ill in there, and she went for help. She goes up to one of the guards and says, she needs help. And he said, well, there's no doctor on duty right now, and it's not my responsibility. And she looked him in the eye and said, yes, it is. Get in there and help her. She was also privy to hearing things that the guards were talking about, and some of them disturbing, such as they were talking about a detainee on the men's side who had died. And what they did was they turned all the lights out in the whole facility, and they took the body out in the dark so people couldn't see and it wouldn't be captured on the camera. Another thing that happened was, I don't know if it was daily, but it was often, they would come in. It started when she got there, they did in the afternoon, calling you, and you, come here. And then they sent them off to a different center in another state where they would have to start all over again with this whole process. You know, maybe lose contact with their families, have to get a new lawyer. Well, when they did that, people were asking, what are you doing? Where are you taking them? They didn't want to be answering those questions, so they started doing it in the middle of the night. And people would wake up in the morning and there were just empty beds. Nobody knew where they were going. I had a friend, another friend, whose brother was taken from Newburgh to Portland, to Tacoma, to Arizona, back to Tacoma, and then to Mexico. Ethics aside, what a waste of money. What a waste of money. But they're saying we still need billions more dollars. Try to be more efficient with what you have. Chaos was the goal. So that's happening over here. Meantime, Bianca is doing all the paperwork, trying to get things ready for this bond hearing. After I had gotten off the phone with her, I immediately called Kevin and said, what can we do? He got on the horn and he is talking to politicians both at the city level, the county, state, and even federal level, writing letters. One of those people was Courtney Neron, who is our senator who represents us. And she is a go-getter. She got on the horn and was working to advocate for her constituent. And when she heard we were going up for the bond hearing, she goes, I'm going with you. So 12 days after Adriana was imprisoned, there's a group of us. We caravan up before dawn to get to Tacoma. They bring us into this waiting room, and we meet the attorney, and she said, well, there were 11 people on the docket today for their hearings, but 9 of them were taken away to another detention center in the middle of the night, the day before their hearing. We were so grateful that Adriana was not one of them. So we go into this room, and Adriana comes up the aisle to go to the front wearing her prison uniform. When I saw that, that really choked me up because it was such a visual representation of how they perceived her and treated her. Judge comes in, they're talking so fast. I'm in the back of the room. I really couldn't hear what was going on. All of a sudden, gavel goes down, done. And I'm like looking at Jake, what happened? He said, they've accepted her bond. They moved it from $25,000 to $7,000, which is still a lot of money, but a far cry from $25,000. So she got to go home. We were so relieved. There aren't words to describe how relieved we are. They sent her home with an ankle bracelet. I saw her 2 days later, and lots of tears. Tears of gratitude that she was finally home, got to sleep in her own bed, eat healthy food. But most of her tears were for those people that she left behind. She felt so bad that I'm here and they are still living that nightmare. A week or so later, she goes to that hearing that, the one she got the letter for, and to find out whether she could be accepted for her green card. And they told her, well, your paperwork's not here anymore. That went up to Tacoma. Now it's in federal. We have to wait for them to terminate that case so you can start all over again. I saw her a few days ago, and she was not bitter. She was not angry. She's at peace, hopeful for her future. She's grateful for this grandbaby that's going to be coming into her life. And she's thinking of ways that she can help others. She's still blooming where she's planted. And in that, creating a rich soil for others to bloom to. So I don't know about you, but to me, she's the hero of this story. So I have a few questions that I want you to talk about at your tables. How does this story encourage you to bloom where you are planted? Maybe you're in a job where you feel stagnant, or maybe you have some health concerns that are hard, or maybe you're living with or caring for someone who you love deeply but might be challenging. How can you be blooming where you're planted? And then the other question is, how might you want to be an ally for our immigrant neighbors? If you're needing some fresh ideas, next week we're going to talk about that. So, thank you.
a close. I do know that this is important to many of you, all of you. This is important to sort through. Just know that we're not going to come up with all the right answers today. So, this is just some primers that will help us continue the conversation. Our next speaker today is John Records. John Records is now a personal friend of mine and is involved with our immigration team along with Colleen. We do have an immigration team, a part of our community that is working towards helping those that need help with preparing for the unthinkable. And the unthinkable would be detained or deportation. And we are helping people through the process pre, during, and post detainment. How we're doing that is we're just helping them collect the information necessary that they need to go through the process. And that's just how we've decided to help. We can't necessarily help them, in front of a judge, but we can prepare them to be in front of a judge legally and ethically, helping them to do the right thing. So that's the path that we've chosen to take as an immigration team, to help them put together information. We are going to talk about that next week. Next week is our next conversation. We're going to explain the Sherwood immigration team and how we've come about and what specifically we're doing to prepare those that need that kind of help. So next week, you're going to be introduced to all of that information and the class and the seminar that we're putting together to help people that want to help others. So you will be given that information. Actually, you'll be given that information first. So this is the first group that we're going to be preparing that for. And then March 3rd is our first seminar that we're offering to those that want to help others. John Records is a former lawyer. He has been, and now you're retired. You live in Newburgh. Retired in Newburgh, and he has been involved with us for quite some time now. John is very detail oriented. So today you're going to hear the details of just some certain information. Colleen is a great storyteller. Of course, my daughter's kindergarten teacher back in the day. And so Colleen gives some really heartfelt insight to the story and kind of a view and a window into what happens. And John's going to give us some details. So let's welcome John to the stage, and thank you for participating.
Good morning, everybody. 6 months ago, I didn't care about this issue. We have the climate, right? There are so many big, ugly problems. I was kind of like bad things shouldn't happen to people, but I didn't care until it became real for me. Colleen did, I think, perhaps the best possible job with the story in her wonderful presentation to make it real. And I was sitting there just outraged. I'm still a little off balance as I think about what the ICE agents did to Colleen's friend and family. So if we could have the first slide, please. My job, as Kevin suggested, is to provide the big picture. Now that we know enough to care, we can get more of a sense of what's going on and why. I'll explain more about the point of the spear as we go through. But what I would say now is that the immigration effort that we're aware of is, I was thinking, when I was preparing for this, it's kind of like the tip of the iceberg of something much, much bigger underwater. It's also the point of the spear of a weapon that I think is being used with great intentionality. Let's look at the statistics on the next slide. So as Colleen mentioned, we're told that they're going after the worst of the worst: rapists, murderers. The fact is that only 5% of the people who've been detained have any prior criminal history at all. And sometimes that's for like a barroom fight. Almost 3/4 of the ICE detainees have no criminal history. So we're told, we're going after the worst of the worst, which stirs people up, gets them to vote. And then what do we really see? A 1,500% increase in the people with no criminal history since January of last year. This hints at the rest of the iceberg, the part that's under the surface. Let's now move on to look at what the price tag for all this is. I was astonished. 170 expletive deleted billion dollars in the one big beautiful bill. How do we make sense of a number like 170 billion? Here's a way. It is greater than the total we spend on law enforcement in every city and every county in all 50 states. $170 billion more than that. The amount that they've got set aside for detention is around 45 billion, which is larger by about 60% than the whole federal prison system budget. And the budget tripled overnight. Next slide, please. Have you seen these pictures? Could have been you or me. In Minneapolis, it seems like a long time ago, it was just last month, there was something called Operation Metro Surge. 2,000 masked, heavily armed, unaccountable ICE agents were unleashed on the community. People felt like it was an invasion. What happened with Colleen's friend happened to 3,000 people in a short time. It's traumatizing. People are not going to their faith communities. They're not taking their kids to school. They're afraid to go to work. They're intimidated and terrorized. So Renee Good, age 37, mother of 3, had dropped her child off at school, was parked in her Honda Pilot in a residential neighborhood, interacted with one or more ICE agents. The videos show her apparently trying to leave, which I think is probably what they told her to do. Her last recorded words were, "That's fine, dude. I'm not mad at you." Then she shot 3 times. Once in the head, as the agents' recorded words were an unspeakably vile insult to women. The administration said on TV and in the media, well, she had weaponized her car. Look at the video. Senator Rand Paul, a Republican, says, nope, doesn't look like that to me. A couple weeks later, Alex Pretty, could we go back to the slide, please, Jake? Also age 37, an ICU nurse serving vets, was using his phone to monitor what was going on. And as you can see, the phone videos that people are taking nationwide are so important to the truth coming out, because the administration spins patent lies that are controverted by the visual evidence. And brave people like Alex are doing that. Alex sees a woman pushed to the ground near him. He did what I bet most of us here would have done. Move to help her up. He was pepper sprayed, gang tackled by 6 masked, armored, and armed agents, thrown to the ground, and shot in the back while he lay on his belly 3 or 4 times. It would be fair to say that he was executed. Stephen Miller, who's the deputy chief of staff to President Trump for policy, called him a would-be assassin. The videos do not support that at all. Alex did have a gun. He was a licensed concealed carry person. It was in a holster on his back. He never touched it. They took his weapon and they executed him. Again, Rand Paul, who is, whatever else you think of him, is a thoughtful observer, looked at the videos and said, no, those stories about it don't fly. There have been 30 plus shootings by immigration agents since January 2025. 8 people dead, 5 were US citizens. It occurs to me that, once again, this could be us as we seek to love like Jesus, as is the mission of this church, as we seek to do what is right for our neighbors. Can we go to the next slide, please?
That's the video.
Yes, this is a, don't start it yet though. This is a short video by a very brave woman who refused to be intimidated and who photographed or videographed what happened to Alex and then went on a news show to talk about it. Let's let her speak for herself.
They want us, again, to be afraid of them. They want us to be scared, intimidated into silence. I can lose my safety. I can lose security. They can take everything away from me, but they can't take my voice. They want us to be intimidated.
They feed off it.
They escalate in every single way if they are not able to use that fear in order to intimidate us into backing down.
So
That
if you're
is-
not intimidated, they escalate.
And that's exactly what happened to Alex. He did not let them intimidate him. In fact, he stood up for 2 women that they were absolutely brutalizing, and that made them mad that they were not able to intimidate him into tucking his tail and leaving.
Your camera is actually the closest camera to that moment of the Border Patrol guy shoving these women onto the sidewalk, but it's the closest, and you have the closest vantage point of them being pepper sprayed.
One moment, there are people being pushed around, there are people being maced right in front of me. The next thing I know, it's gunshots. It's so many gunshots, I couldn't believe it. I really have barely a recollection of the moments immediately after, other than just the feeling of absolute horror and also rage that it escalated like this. So they backed up, and I was sure he was dead.
You're scared, but you're still standing up.
Yes, I think it's so important. Now is not the time to stay silent in this, for anyone at all. They want us, again, to be afraid of them.
As I watch and listen to her, I appreciate her courage. And a question, when you talk at the tables afterward, is one that I've been asking myself a lot. What would I have done? Would I have had the courage to take the video? Would I have had the courage to put a target on my back by going on national news and talking about what happened. Those are the questions I would invite you when we get to the tables. So we can ask ourselves, what is driving this? Why on earth are we investing these unprecedented funds to persecute, harass, terrorize, brutalize brown-skinned people, 75% of whom, roughly, have no criminal history? Why? Why would we do that? Stephen Miller's name comes up again, the Deputy Chief of Staff to Donald Trump. He's the architect of this program. About 10 years ago, there were 900 plus emails leaked to a national news outlet called Breitbart, in which it was clear that Miller had a lot of contact with white nationalist websites. He's a proponent of something called the Great Replacement Theory, that white people are being intentionally displaced somehow, for some reason, by brown-skinned people. It's clear that what's going on is not about public safety. The data do not support that. They just don't. If anything, I think we're less safe. Immigration seems to be used as a wedge issue to gain votes and gain power. It's the point of a spear to divide us. And very significantly, I think, to undermine our democracy. As my friend Kevin said, I'm a retired lawyer. At one time, I took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I look with alarm, with horror, at what seems to be the development of a huge secret police force, unaccountable to anybody, supported by people who are willing to lie and vilify and attack the victims. To what end? Well, we've seen what happens in other countries with such unaccountable power. At the same time, they're converting a lot of warehouses into detention centers. If people are being deported, what do we need all those beds for? So I hope it doesn't go in this direction, but I'm concerned for us and for our children and our neighbors that there are a lot of signs of an authoritarianism that is well thought out, very carefully implemented by smart people, that is systematically taking away the guardrails that have us ruled by laws rather than by men. Next slide, please. I think our mission is clear. There are all kinds of views of what it means to be a Christian, and if you go through a deconstruction process, as some in the room have, and there's a lot that's murky, but I think some things stay clear. Loving like Jesus is a good idea, yeah? He didn't say to harass and brutalize a stranger, but to welcome the stranger. Even as you do it under the least of these, you do it unto me. Both good and bad. Right? If we say that the image of God is in us all, what a horrific desecration that is when we treat people this way. So I think we have some major challenges ahead of us, which we can face together. One is, of course, to love our neighbor, to provide tangible support like we've done already, like we're planning to do more of, like you will be invited to participate in if you want to. Not just thoughts and prayers, useful as they can be, but actual, tangible, concrete support. Second, to respond appropriately to what's happening to our democracy. And I recognize that people may not agree with what I'm saying there. They may feel it's benign. I talked on the phone with an old friend yesterday who thinks that it's good, that it's a good thing. I can't believe that this man, whom I know to be kind and thoughtful and a supporter of charities, could have those views. But the fact is that a lot of our neighbors do feel that way, maybe with some caveats and hesitations, but overall that it's a good direction that the country is going in. So I want to be open to, people can have that perspective. I'm glad to discuss it. I'm glad to listen to other positions and maybe have my mind changed. And maybe the most challenging thing for us is not to hate as we do this. It would be so easy to hate someone like Stephen Miller, the people who are overtly racist, the ICE agents who executed Alex and Renee. They too, we're told, are worthy of our love, the love of God expressed through us. I take inspiration from Mahatma Gandhi, whom, as you know, was the leader of the resistance to British colonial rule in India. He was a proponent of nonviolence, rooted considerably in some of the biblical teachings. Some people hated him. He was assassinated by a religious fanatic. And his last 3 words before he died, stay with me. Does anybody know what they are? No? God, God, God. He was offering his whole life to God. And I think he was blessing the person who shot him at that time. He had anticipated that something like this would happen. And as I recall the history, he had hoped that it would be a positive and unifying force. So we have our immense challenges. We know what we're supposed to do. And now we get to work together in a loving way to do what needs to be done. Thank you all.
So let's move to our table talks. We're going to take 5 minutes. All right, let's bring those thoughts to a close. And do we have questions? All right. One question so far. Wow, we're a quiet question group. So this question is for John, but I'm sure that it could be spoken by both. John, why do you think ICE is not in Dallas, Houston, or Miami, or Vegas, or other places?
What is softball?
Turn it back on. You're off now.
Okay. Okay. So I appreciate the softball question. Why do I think that ICE is not in Dallas, Miami, and what was the other one? Yeah, yeah. I can only think that it's a political decision. There have been other decisions by